We are live. UFC 249 preview primer with Clint MacLean at DieHardMMAPod on Twitter, the UFC extraordinaire. Welcome in, Clint. How you feeling, man?
Doing pretty great, Drew. Thanks again for having me, man. I appreciate it. I'm stoked. Can't wait for fights to be back, stuff to bet on. I am ready to go.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait either. And it's a great time to start this. Where do I bet.com, a new and up-and-coming community here, looking to build it as, heck, we're in a heck of a pandemic right now, heck at times. There's going to be books written about this in the future here, Clint, and it's just really good to have live sporting events back, and UFC's kind of taking the cake here first out of the gate, huh?
Absolutely. It's never been a better time to be an MMA handicapper, man. That's always kind of the sport that gets shoved to the side. We're the redheaded stepchild that no one really pays attention to, but we are front and center right now, and you're absolutely right. Making history, it's going to be interesting to see how people look back on this time period. And I'm just happy we're going to have some live sports to watch.
Yeah, for sure, guys. And we got, 3 UFC events coming up in next week on Wednesday night and next Saturday. So it just doesn't end this Saturday night at 10 o'clock on pay-per-view, I believe, Clint, in Jacksonville, Florida, right?
That's right. This first one is on pay-per-view. It's the most stacked card of the year. They've got some serious name power on this one. And then it doesn't let up, man. We are right back at it Wednesday next week and then Saturday next week. Both of those are excellent cards. I mean, obviously, they can't hold a candle to UFC 249, but for getting, free content essentially for two more events like that in quick succession, 3 events in 8 days, I'm not complaining.
No, not at all, man. And heck, let's give the people what they want, man. We got a great card, really top to bottom here. But the main event, you got to play on it. I like it as well. I haven't fired away yet, but looking to get on this side. We got Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson. Gaethje plus 150, Ferguson minus 175 on the other side. I'm quoting Bet Online odds right now. We got a total of 2.5, a little bit of plus money on that over, minus 145 to the under of 2.5. What's your play here on Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson, Clint?
So I'm on the dog side, Drew. I almost always make a case for the dog. That's my favorite thing to do in mixed martial arts is make a case for the dog. I'd rather risk less to win more. And you're locking 2 human beings inside of a steel cage. These guys are told you get half of your check if you lose this fight. So your family, the food you put on your table, all that kind of stuff, it is cut down, and you cannot underestimate the power of human beings when they're put in that situation. So even if a guy is a favorite, that dog is just always going to be live, more so in mixed martial arts than in the bigger events, baseball, basketball, football. Those are all numerically driven. You've got a team that just statistically is better than the other team everywhere. It is so hard to overcome that deficit. But in the cage, one night, one punch, one kick, you can take that and walk out of there with a heck of a lot more money. And that's what Justin has basically built his career off of, man. Tony Ferguson is an absolute mountain to climb. I do not like stepping in front of him. He's one of my favorite fighters. He's one of the most interesting figures in MMA. But this is way too much juice to be given me on Justin Gaethje. I think this fight is a coin flip, essentially. And if you're giving me plus 150 to flip that coin, I will take it. If you had me picking this thing even money, one of these guys is going to fight to save my life and I have to pick the winner, okay, maybe I'll take Tony Ferguson in that situation. But at the juice, we're talking sports betting here. We've got some extra juice on our side. I love plus 150 on Gaethje.
Okay, so liking the dog here, so did I off the first look. One thing that I really like the matchup, he has good leg kicks, and we've seen just of recent Tony Ferguson, he kind of had a little issue there with his leg in his last fight. Is that what you could see happening here, or do you see the fight going a different route?
That's really one of my favorite pieces to this thing is Justin Gaethje's leg kick attack. That's what he does every time. Now, I mean, I know Tony's going to be prepared for that. He's seen it on the tape too, so it's not going to be a surprise for him, but it's something that he's always had kind of a hole in his own game for. I think Justin's going to manage to be successful with it. Plus, Tony is an excellent grappler. He's an excellent scrambler. He's got wrestling in his back pocket as well. And Justin Gaethje, I think, is a better wrestler than Tony Ferguson is. That's going to be in his back pocket to use wrestling in reverse to keep this thing standing. So I think that those leg kicks and then the power that Justin Gaethje brings is unreal. He's the hardest puncher at 155, and Tony's just hittable. He's the kind of guy that likes to wade into the fire. He wants to get in a firefight with you. He wants that action fight, and he'll just mow you down with his relentless cardio. Justin's not really the guy you want to do that with, though. I mean, if anyone can do it, Tony can do it. But Justin wants someone to bring the fight to him. You give him those openings. If you get clipped, you can't get clipped by Justin Gaethje. Other fighters that you can get clipped by and recover and shake off the cobwebs, but the power that Gaethje brings to the table, if you get hit just once, it's over.
Okay, good breakdown there, Clint. We got two more bets here, actually both on the prelims from Clint, and then a shot in the dark in a parlay to wrap it up. We will hit on some of the other part of the main card here at the end as well. We got Greg Hardy, of course, the old NFL player, fighting in this, Francis Ngannou. So some big names here, plus Donald Cerrone, the guy that just fought Conor McGregor as well. So some big names on this card. We're going to hit them all here quickly in about a 15-minute segment here, guys. We got Dilly in the chat saying maybe a better wrestler, but who has a better submission game with a question mark? Any answer to that, Clint?
Oh, that's Tony Ferguson, hands down. I mean, if you're talking submissions, Gaethje essentially doesn't have them. And Tony's got those long, lanky arms. He can hit a Darce choke from pretty much anywhere. If you're talking about grappling and all of its aspects, submission, everything, Tony's definitely got the edge. But that's where I love Justin Gaethje's counter wrestling. Hopefully he can nullify that threat. Hopefully this fight stays standing. If it hits the mat, then we've got a problem because we're in Tony Ferguson's world.
Okay, that makes total sense. Plus, we got UGA Dog Fan 79 in here saying Clint and Drew, love seeing it. Two of his favorite handicappers. So shout out to you, Clint. We got two more here on the prelims that you bet. Nico Price is a guy you're looking at betting for UFC 249. What are you liking with Nico?
So Nico is just a wild animal. This is another situation where I feel like we're getting value here. Anything above plus 200 on Nico Price is pure value. The guy's got the death touch, and I use that terminology very sparingly. A lot of people have power. Very few of them have death touch, and Nico Price is one of the ones that has death touch. He can finish you from anywhere. He's got a KO from bottom. And I mean, that just doesn't happen. I think he's the only guy in the UFC right now that has knocked his opponent out from being underneath them on his back. It's incredible the amount of force that this kid can generate. He's also a complete warrior. He goes forward with reckless abandon, and he will be willing to go out on his shield to catch that killing blow on his opponent. And at plus 240, I will roll those dice. That's not the kind of fighter you want to take if you're looking at plus 125, plus 130. They don't care for themselves. They can get clipped, that kind of thing. But at plus 240, I'll flip that coin any day of the week. He's facing Vicente Luque. He's got a 1-inch height advantage, a 1-inch reach advantage, and Vicente Luque is another fighter that's got defensive problems. So yes, Nico Price takes more damage, generally speaking, in his fights than he outputs, but so does Vicente Luque. And Vicente Luque, he hasn't been knocked out yet. And to me, what that says is his chin is due for a crack. He's fought a lot of top-level competition. He's coming off of a loss to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, where he took a full 15 minutes of punishment. Before that, he took 15 minutes of punishment from Mike Perry, who's one of the hardest hitters at 170, and he barely squeezed by a split decision on that. I think Nico is trending downward. I don't think he's improving. I think he's getting worse. And with the amount of damage he's taking, eventually somebody's going to clip him. Somebody with the power of Nico Price with a 1-inch reach advantage is the kind of person that's going to do that.
I like it. So plus 240 there with the punch power. And the younger fighter?
You know what? I want to say he is maybe. Are they roughly the same age? I actually didn't look that up.
Roughly the same age. No. It's fine, Clint. But yeah, plus 240 price tag there on a guy, going against an opponent that's at the kind of latter stages of his career is the type of profile that I look to bet in UFC. So I like it, man. Plus 240 there.
So they're both relatively young. I feel like they've both got a decent amount of gas in the tank, but Vicente is one of those guys that everybody talked about being a title contender super early. So he skyrocketed up to the end of the towards the top of the division. He was looking for that, break into the top 5, top 10 in his last fight, and that's where he dropped the ball with Wonderboy. So, I wouldn't say he's like close to retirement age or anything like that, but for a 28-year-old, he's taken a ton of punishment in his last 3 or 4 fights.
Yeah, 28. I mean, it's not young in the UFC, that's for sure. And, having to lay a big price tag right there. Nico Price, plus 240. either way you look at it. We also got Charles Rosa, another fighter here you're looking to take a shot with at a plus price. What are you liking about Charles Rosa?
That's right. Boston Strong. I love this kid. So he is facing Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, who is a absolute hype train right now. So this kid, Bryce Mitchell, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of him. I like him. He's very entertaining. He's got a good skill set, but people are already talking about him being a title challenger. People are already talking about him being, a top 5 fighter in the division, stuff like that. He's only been in the UFC for a couple fights, and he's fought relatively low competition, all guys with losing records in the UFC. So Rosa, on the other hand, has fought a couple of guys in the UFC. He's got some wins locked up, and he fought very well with some very impressive fighters. Guys like Yair Rodriguez. He managed to lose those fights, unfortunately, but they were close. They were competitive. He's competing with the upper echelon of the division. Now, he disappeared for a couple of years. He had some injury concerns, but he came back in his last fight. His opponent missed weight by a massive margin, and he snapped him off with an armbar in the first round. He's saying that he's feeling better than he ever has. His time off has healed his injuries, and we're really looking at a 2.0 version of Rosa right now. And honestly, this is another value play for me. I think that at worst case scenario, this should be an even money fight. You've got a young kid, and that line is indicative of all the fans around the world being hyped about him and entertained by him. He pulled off a twister in his last fight, and I think that's the reason why this line is so wide. That gives us value on the other guy. It's an even fight. It could go either way. I think that Rosa is the better striker of the two. Thug Nasty probably has a little bit more power on the feet, but he's not nearly as polished. And then when they're on the mat, Bryce Mitchell is a brown belt. Rosa is a black belt. Now, in MMA, grappling and belt levels don't necessarily equate to being the same thing. They could be relatively even. But again, if you've got an edge on the feet and you're even on the ground and I'm getting plus 150, I'll take it.
Plus 150. You think it's a toss-up fight? I like it, Clint. I think I'll be on that one as well. I'm going to tell you on all of these, man.
All right, let's make some money.
Here. Yeah, for sure, bro. Okay, so we got a parlay to get to. I do want to ask you about some of these kind of bigger name fights on the main card and one prelim here. Shout out to CBMS420. I believe that's Maxwell Smart in the house.
Maxwell Smart.
Buddy. Yeah. He's a good guy. Knows college basketball as good as anybody out there. Give him a follow on Twitter. But we got 3 here that I wanted. Okay, so on the prelims, we got Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. Looks like Pettis minus 143, Cerrone plus 123. And Clint, I know you know UFC a lot better than me, but I as of a lot of people watching this right now, probably most Americans out there have seen Donald Cerrone in his last fight. Mm-hmm. Not a good show. Not a good showing whatsoever. Did not last long. I almost like to think I could last longer against Conor McGregor, even though that's probably a reach. Either way, he did make it very long, not out of the first round. So he's got kind of a lot of time here where he's preparing for that fight and then preparing for this fight. I almost think it's a buy low opportunity on him. Now, he could get smoked again. I do think Anthony Pettis is a more talented fighter, but if I'm not mistaken, Donald Cowboy Cerrone is the winningest fighter in UFC history, correct?
I believe that's correct. Yeah, he's got the record.
Okay. So, I mean, at a plus 123 price tag here, I'm looking towards Cerrone. You think it'd talk me off of that?
If I had to make a pick on this one, I would be on the Cerrone side. The reason that I've passed on this fight is there are so many questions on both sides. So both these guys are coming off of losses. Pettis has dropped his last 2. He's 1-3 in his last 4. Cerrone's on an 0-3 skid. All 3 of those by finish. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, and he's not taking time off to recover. The dude's 37 years old. And when you get knocked out by somebody like Justin Gaethje, you're going to need 9 months for your brain to really recover and come back full and sharp. And that was probably the easiest bet that I've cashed in my life, was when he fought Conor McGregor. I had the under 1.5, and it was just the easiest thing I think I've ever done, because I knew his brain was still rattled coming off of the Gaethje fight. Now, these interviews have come out. He's talked about being mentally checked out. He wasn't all the way there. We know he struggles to rise in big moments, things like that. That's always been a story with Donald Cerrone. So this is a spot where he can shine. He's the main fight of the preliminary card. He's not going to be under the bright lights. He's not on the pay-per-view. He's fighting a guy like Anthony Pettis, who's a guy he's familiar with. He's fought him before. He's known him since the WEC days, and it's a revenge spot for him. It's a late opportunity for him in his career to avenge the loss to Anthony Pettis from all those years ago. So I think we're going to get a pissed off version of Donald Cerrone here. I think given what happened with Conor McGregor, he's going to come out guns blazing. He's really going to look to, shake off the rust here. Anthony Pettis, on the other hand, as much as I respect and like the dude, he's towards the end of his career as well. He's taken a lot of damage. He's been in a lot of wars, and the dude's got some quit in him. When you get him into a fight, if you put the pressure on him, he doesn't really fight back anymore. He just kind of shells up and takes it and waits for the ref to towel in for him. And that's something that's very concerning. So there's so many red flags on both sides of this fight that I'm completely staying off it. I wouldn't mind a look at the under 2.5, because like I said, I think Cerrone comes out pissed off. And if both guys are brittle, both guys still have the output, the finishing ability, I think someone goes to sleep in this fight, honestly. But if I had to pick one, I again would side with the dog. I'd take the dog money with Donald Cerrone. He's the bigger of the two fighters. And even though he is coming off of all those bad losses in a row, I'm not sure how damaging the Conor McGregor loss really was. The Justin Gaethje loss, that was a bad knockout. That was a really nasty knockout. But the Conor McGregor one, he was out of it. He didn't want to be in that fight in the first place. Right. And he got up right afterward. It's not like he was unconscious on the cage floor for 5 minutes after it was all over. He was just kind of disappointed in himself. So, I would side with Cerrone if I had to pick one.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it was almost like he went in there to get paid, and I don't blame him, but I think that kind of is an advantage to him in his next fight, which is Saturday night. We also got Yorgan de Castro versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy near a -$2 favorite here, -195 at Bet Online right now, +170 the other way on Yorgan de Castro, 1.5 total here. Looks like some heavy juice towards the over. Mm-hmm. So, any feeling here with Greg Hardy? A lot of people know him from being an ex-NFL player, so I thought I'd throw it out to you.
Yeah, he's another big name these days. He was super controversial when he first got into the UFC. Everybody roasted Dana White for bringing him on the roster. Now he's just another one of the boys. This is his, 4th or 5th UFC fight, so we're kind of used to talking about him at this point. I agree with both of the juice pieces here. I agree. I think Greg Hardy's probably going to win this fight. I also agree on the over, but there's no way I'm going to lay like -170 on it or something like that to get there. He's facing Yorgan de Castro, which Yorgan, I believe, is probably the better striker. I like this guy. He's another leg kicker. He's like a giant version of Justin Gaethje. And I think that could cause some problems with Greg Hardy. He might try to chop down the tree, if you will, and go after his legs and make it a dirty fight. Greg Hardy has shown that he's got 15 minutes of cardio, which is rare for a heavyweight. From that NFL background, he's a super athletic big man, and we just don't see many of those. So I think he's going to take his time here. I don't think he's going to rush in and provide the opening that Yorgan had for his last fight, where he got that highlight reel walk-off KO. Hardy's going to take his time. Hardy's going to try and pick his spots, pick him apart, wear him down. And he's just going to be the bigger, more athletic guy, too. I think he's got like a 5-inch height advantage and a 5 or 4-inch reach advantage. So it's going to be hard for Yorgan to close that distance, or he's going to have to expend a lot of energy to do so. So I do think this fight gets over because Hardy's not going to put himself in a position where he can really get caught. He's been clipped a couple times, and every single time he's walked through it, the dude's got a brick for a head. His chin has been tested, and it checks out. And then I don't think that he's going to give the opening for Yorgan to finish by going for the finish himself until he sees it very clearly. So I think Hardy, I think over, but you can't lay this kind of chalk on Hardy. That's my only problem. The dude has 2 no contest disqualifications in 4 UFC fights. It's unreal. He always finds a way to screw something up. He threw an illegal knee to a downed opponent, and then in one of his other fights, he tried to use an inhaler on the stool between rounds. Like, he does shit that you're not allowed to do, and everyone should know you can't do it. I'm trying to figure out how he's going to get disqualified this fight.
Oh man, that's hilarious. We got another one here before we get to the parlay. Francis Ngannou, a guy that I like, man. I've watched him fight, and he's one of those guys. It's just like, man, I would never pick to fight this man. He's just like that type of a look to him. But -265 against Rozenstruik. Not sure on the name there. +225 the other way. Is that what kind of kept you off of this too? The price is just too high.
Basically, yeah. I know a lot of sharp people are taking Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and the fact is, you've got value on that line. So if you're a sniper and you're simply looking to abuse value lines and roll the dice, most of the time I am, but this isn't one of them. You can bet Jairzinho Rozenstruik and you're going to get value on that line. Rozenstruik is a very polished striker. He's got a kickboxing record, something upwards of 70 fights before he got into pro MMA. The dude knows what he's doing. And, his last fight against Alistair Overeem, he was getting beaten up for 24 straight minutes. And with 5 seconds left on the clock, he lunged across the cage and put Overeem out. I mean, he's got devastating power. We talk about how hard Francis Ngannou lands. Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a very close second as far as power goes. These are the top 2 hitters in the UFC today. The big deal for me is just, again, the height and the reach. Ngannou is going to have a massive height and reach advantage over Rozenstruik. So Rozenstruik's going to be on the outside. He's going to have to close that distance, and that leaves that opening for Ngannou to land. And Ngannou is the other guy I use the term death touch with. You cannot get hit by this man. If you do, your head's going into the 5th row. So I am personally going to side with Francis Ngannou here, but it's the same thing on the flip side. The power of Rozenstruik, the athleticism of Rozenstruik, I'm not laying 240 against a guy that can do that. You would be chewing your nails off and get into the bones on your fingers about 2 minutes into the fight. I do think this one goes over. We've got some history with Rozenstruik going 5 rounds with Alistair Overeem. We've got some history with the Black Beast Lewis taking on Ngannou. They win a full 15 minutes, which nobody saw that coming. 2 big old power punchers. How could they possibly go to decision? Well, it's because neither guy wants to get knocked out. They both respect each other's power. I could see this one edging over the 1.5, but at the same time, it's sketchy because, again, they're the 2 hardest hitters in the UFC today. So that's a scary proposition. Again, I like Ngannou. I like over, but I'm passing on it because I don't want to fade Rozenstruik, and I'm definitely not laying that price.
All right, Clint. And how about it with the parlay you wanted to throw out there, man? What should we take a shot with?
This is maybe a bit of a square parlay, but I'm having a little bit of fun, man. We haven't had anything to bet on for a while, and the UFC is finally coming back around. I'm an action junkie. I need to get in there. So what I've got is a couple of favorites that I like, and I want to protect my units. Instead of laying between 6 and 8 units on these 3 favorites, I'm going to tie them all together and just hope for the best. So we're kicking the night off. First fight of the night, Ryan Spann. All right. He is taking on Sam Alvey. The fact of the matter is, Sam Alvey is a 185er who is masquerading as a 205er late in his career. He doesn't belong there. The dude's got power. If he lands, he can knock you out, but that's really all he relies on. He's low volume, and he doesn't do anything but circle and look for one big counter shot for the entire fight. He basically cries robbery every single fight, and he is outstruck by his opponent in every single fight. So, yeah, he's just not a guy that I think is UFC caliber anymore. Spann, on the other hand, big, young up-and-comer. He's a -400 to -450 favorite for a reason. He's got speed. He's got the range. He's got the athleticism. He's a true 205er, so he's a much bigger man. He's also got a wicked ground game. Now, Alvey doesn't often get to the mat, but if this thing does get there, Spann's going to get on that neck, and I don't think Alvey's getting back up. Basically, Ryan Spann can win this fight any way he wants to. By knockout, submission, or taking it to a decision, he's going to be the one that walks away the winner, in my opinion. I don't like laying those giant lines, but since we're doing this parlay, might as well toss it in because I do think he's kind of the lock of the night. The second leg of this parlay is going to be Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's fighting Jeremy Stephens, and I feel like Calvin Kattar is essentially a Jeremy Stephens 2.0. Now, in real-world years, they're only about a year apart. Calvin Kattar's barely younger than Jeremy Stephens. In fight years, Jeremy Stephens has been around forever. The dude's 80 years old. Like, he's got so many fights, and Calvin Kattar has a fraction of his experience. But Calvin Kattar is just a much more technical boxer. He's going to be better at using the range. He circles better. Jeremy Stephens is a brawler. He wants to walk forward. He wants to kick your leg, and then he wants to get into a power slugfest. And if you don't engage in that brawl with him, he doesn't really have a way to win. If you can out-technique him for 15 minutes, he just never gets the opportunity to land that power shot. We've seen that in his last couple fights. He got beat by Jose Aldo. He got beat by Zabit Magomedsharipov, Yair Rodriguez. All these guys that are headed towards the top 5 or so, they just get by Jeremy Stephens. He's turned into a gatekeeper. And I think Calvin Kattar is one who belongs in that top 5. I think he's a guy that simply is going to be able to out-technique Stephens over 15 minutes. And also, like I said, Stephens has been around forever. He's been in wars, and lately his durability is showing. He's been hurt to the body in all 3 of his last fights, and one of those was a TKO loss to Jose Aldo. He actually ended up getting finished. So I'm not ruling out a finish here for Kattar. Kattar has some serious pop on his punches. He generally tends to go the distance, but I do think there's an opportunity here for him to finish Stephens if they get into it. So I like Calvin Kattar. Again, I don't necessarily want to lay the minus 250 on him straight, so he fits straight on in with this parlay. We're going to anchor this thing on my boy Triple C, the 2-time champion, Henry Cejudo. The reason we're doing this is because, again, I just think this line is crazy wide. I think Cejudo wins the fight, but I don't want to lay minus 225 on Henry Cejudo when he's going to be at the physical disadvantages that he is in this fight. He should win because the mountain is just so tall to climb for Dominick Cruz coming back. This guy hasn't fought in 4 years. He's had multiple layoffs, multiple surgeries, knee problems. At the lower weight classes, being fast is far more important than being strong. And if you're not able to move around, his whole game is based on movement and footwork. And if he's even lost 10% of what he used to be able to do, he's just going to get dusted by a guy that's as fast and as explosive as Henry Cejudo is. And Henry Cejudo is really coming into his own. You know, he started off decisioning people, really relying on his wrestling, but his last 2 fights, 2 of the biggest names in his division, he KO'd cold because his striking has come along leaps and bounds. He's got incredible explosive power punching. And in Dominick Cruz's last several fights, the one punch that everybody was able to catch him with is a straight right hand, and that's Henry Cejudo's best weapon. So again, this is one where I think it's probably going to go all 5 rounds. We've got an Olympic level wrestler. Yes, Dom is an incredible mixed martial arts wrestler, but an Olympic level wrestler, you're not going to be able to out wrestle that guy. If Dom is slower at all because of the injuries, the wear and tear on his body, Henry Cejudo is going to grind on him. If Henry gets the opportunity for that right hand, I think he could put him out cold. Dom doesn't finish his opponents. He has no way to finish this fight. He has to outclass Henry Cejudo for a full 25 minutes after a 4-year layoff. I just don't see it happening.
All right, there's the parlay. We also got 3 bets as well. We got Charles Rosa plus 150, Nico Price plus 240, and Justin Gaethje in the main event, UFC 249, Jacksonville, Florida, 10 p.m. Saturday night. Justin Gaethje plus 150 over Tony Ferguson. That's what I'm tailing you on, Clint.
Love it.
Man, great show overall. Guys, if you like the content, please give us a like. Any comments you have there, follow Clint on Twitter at DieHardMMAPod Clint. Clint, any closing words here before we shut this down?
You know, just another big thank you for having me, Drew. I love coming on the show with you and breaking down these fights. We've got 4 bets. All 4 of them are plus lines, so let's risk less to win more. If we go 2-2, it's a damn good night. So I'm hoping we make some money for the people, and good luck to us both, man. If you throw any other action on there, good luck to you on that too.
All right. Best of luck, Clint, and maybe we all win together, man. Thanks all for joining, and remember to wash your hands and stay safe. Enjoy UFC 249 Saturday night, guys.